Chapter 1. Cassidy Meets the Skunk. One morning, Cassidy woke up very, very early. The sun wasn't even up yet. The sky was just getting light. Cassidy didn't know why she woke up so early. That was usually the last thing she wanted to do. Most mornings, Mom and Dad had to nag and coax and beg just to get her out of bed. She couldn't help it. Sleeping was so nice, and the bed was so soft. Why would anyone want to get up and do anything else? That is how she felt almost every morning, but today was different. Today she opened her eyes, and she didn't want to stay in bed. She really, really, really wanted to go outside. Somehow she had a feeling there was something extra special just for her that she had to go and see right now, or it would be gone. So she quietly got out of bed and headed downstairs. Everyone except Mom was still asleep. Mom was up exercising. She looked very surprised when Cassidy walked in. "What are you doing?" Mom asked. "Are you feeling okay?" Cassidy nodded. She talked quietly because it felt new and special to be up before everyone else. "I want to go outside." "Well, okay. Put on your coat, it's chilly, and stay in the yard." Mom was panting as she climbed steps on the exercise machine. Sometimes Cassidy wondered how far Mom had climbed, if she had been climbing real stairs in a real building, not a machine in the exercise room. Cassidy figured it would be a building at least a mile high. Cassidy nodded again and went downstairs. The lights were off because no one had come down yet. There was some light coming in the window, but not a lot. It was still very early. Everything was so quiet, with none of the usual sounds of everyone else getting up and getting washed and dressed and fixing breakfast and eating. There weren't any sounds from the neighbors, even though there was almost always someone coming or going or talking in one of the apartment buildings on either side of their house. She unlocked the door, turned the knob, and pulled with all her might. The door swung open with a sucking sound. Then she pushed the storm door open and stepped out into the cool morning. The sun was just lighting up the street and yard. Cassidy smiled. It felt like she was the only one in the world just then, and that the dawn was especially there for her alone. She heard a noise in the side yard where she and her sister Linnea had built a playhouse from some of the big boxes Dad brought home. "I wonder what is there," she thought, and hopped down the steps to go see. She ran into the yard, and over near the corner of the yard she saw the little skunk that lived somewhere in the neighborhood. Some kids are scared of animals, especially skunks, but not Cassidy. Dad always said, if you don't bother them, they won't bother you. So she didn't run up to the skunk, but she waved. She and Linnea often saw it in the early evening coming out to poke around for food. They had decided that having a skunk around was lucky, because no one else had a skunk that lived near their house. They liked the big, fluffy tail with its white stripe. They really liked the way it kind of rocked side to side as it quietly walked along. Linnea got very good at walking the same way, and it always made Cassidy laugh. So she smiled at the skunk and said, "Hi, Skunk. Did you get something good to eat last night?" The skunk stopped and turned, like it had heard her. It even looked right at Cassidy. Something looked wrong with it, but she couldn't figure out what. Something was wrong with the skunk's head. The skunk tilted its head to the side and looked at Cassidy and said, a little sadly, "It was a lovely night until just a few minutes ago when I got my head stuck." Cassidy's eyes opened wide, and she took a step back. "Did you just talk?" she asked. The skunk shook its head and rolled its eyes. "Here I thought you were smart, little girl, but it turns out you aren't very smart at all. The answer to your question is pretty obvious, isn't it?" Cassidy was very, very surprised, but when she thought about what the skunk said, she realized that it wasn't a very good question. For if the skunk hadn't talked, she wouldn't have heard it, and if she hadn't heard it, she wouldn't have asked if it had talked, so it must have talked. She giggled. "I guess you're right. However, You shouldn't call me stupid. No one ever told me that skunks could talk, and I haven't ever heard one." "Humph," sniffed the skunk. "Probably been too busy to pay attention. Besides, how often have you asked one of us a question? We don't talk if there isn't any reason to, a habit I wish more humans would take up." It seemed to Cassidy that this skunk was rather rude. She had only said good morning in a very nice way, and here it was picking on every little thing she said. She had listened to this skunk long enough. It might be a talking skunk, but a rude talking skunk just wasn't interesting for very long. She turned to go, saying as she headed toward the porch, "I may not ever talk to a skunk again if all skunks are as mean as you are. I think I'd rather eat breakfast than stay here and let you pick on me." "Wait," called the skunk. "I am most sorry. You were right. I'm usually not this snappish, but you see my head is caught and I'm angry and a little bit scared, and if you can't help me, I'm not sure what I will do." Cassidy turned back around. It was a very nice apology. She knelt down and looked closely at the skunk. Suddenly, the something wrong about the skunk's head made sense. Her brain just hadn't been able to make sense of what she had been seeing. Now it all shifted into focus, and she understood. Sometimes when she got a milkshake with whipped cream on top, they put a special lid on it that was like a clear bubble or a dome, instead of the usual flat lids. That special lid kept the whipped cream from being smushed and also let Cassidy see the creamy pile sitting on top of the milkshake. It also had an extra big hole so that she and Linnea could share the milkshake and each have a straw in it at the same time.